going to be a medium length video, maybe about 5 or 10 minutes, just to go through some of the ways that you can make the most of your online lessons as a student, that is, not as a teacher, as a student. So I think that before we start, though, it's probably worth identifying whether or not online lessons are they just a fad, or because of the current situation, are they going to maybe remain a little bit trendy for a little while longer, or are they going to be here to stay? Well, it's difficult to really know, isn't it? But I've been in a few meetings and a few seminars with some people who, this is their business and they're bound to be a little bit biased. But it sounds like they probably are here to stay. Certainly, they're going to make up a large chunk of future education. As more and more schools have been forced to use this online method, then it's likely to stay, because many people are saying it's more effective and it's certainly more convenient. So with that in mind, if it's likely to stay, it's probably best to try to work out how we can make the most of them, so as to waste less and less time, less and less learning as time goes on. So let's get started. We'll go through step by step what the main things we can look at, and most of them are going to be free. So, obviously you have to pay for the lessons, but anything, these are the little changes you can make would be free. So webcam. First of all, do I really need to use one? Some of my students feel a bit reluctant to start off with about using them. I would say yes, basically you do, because you don't need to, but it makes so much difference if you do use one. And when we speak face to face, when we have a meeting, we like to be able to see one another, right? It's just we prefer that, and there's a lot of non-verbal cues that I pick up on as a teacher or whoever you might be taught by. So I want to know, are they currently paying attention, for one thing, but also do they understand what I'm going through? And they may not say, I don't get this, can you say that bit again? Some students are going to be a little bit shyer, and so I need to pick up on those non-verbal cues that they look a bit uncomfortable, and then I'll slow down, repeat it. And so being able to see the student and being able to see whether or not they understand something is, for me, extremely important. And with that in mind, how do you actually use it? Well, we can see clearly that's a lot better than that, right? But what is it that this guy at the bottom did wrong? Well, he's got the window with loads and loads of natural light behind him, and and what's happening is the webcam is adjusting its brightness in order to see the whole picture, and as a result, the light that's appearing on him is a lot dimmer, and so you can barely see him. Now, I've seen cases where it's even worse than this, and depending on your quality of the webcam, you may see even worse view than this. So top tips is test your webcam out first. Make sure it's working okay before you start the lesson. Make sure that you're in focus, so that I can see you properly. Make sure also, by the way, that you're in the middle, not like too close, or in some cases, maybe your entire head is not in the view. So just make sure that's there. And you can also, in most of the time, you'll have your view on show at all time during the lesson, so you can see whether or not you're being, that you're viewable properly. Keep the light in front of you, so not behind like this guy did. Now, to be honest with you, sometimes if your lights, I've got a window on my left. I close the shutters if it's particularly bright, so I don't get a glare on my one side of my head. But it's the main thing is that it's not too bad really. The main thing is that light is not behind you like over here. Make sure you are placed so I can see you properly. As I said, sometimes I see students, I can just see the top of their head, and your view may be different to my view. Sorry. So just bear that in mind. And ensure the laptop and camera is stable. So we don't want it wobbling around whenever you knock the table. We don't want the camera falling off or anything like that. So that's your webcam. Okay. So that's the visual side of the lesson. The sound, well, so it's basically headphones or speakers are the main question. Whether or not you get good quality speakers, headphones, it's not really going to make much of a difference, really. I mean, I've got a reasonably good quality microphone, but I wouldn't suggest it to spend any money on that yet, really. The advantage of the headphones is there's less likely to be any echo. So if you've got speakers going, then my voice might be echoed back to me, which could be distracting. However, usually computers are able to correct for that, and so you won't get an echo. It'll just come every now and again. Headphones can be good for just reducing other outside noise as well. Reducing. Well, basically, it can improve the sound quality in other ways. The disadvantage is that you may have a parent or carer in the room as well. They're usually not in eyeshot, and I would recommend that the parent or carer, if available, is able to sit in on the lesson, at least on the first lesson. And as I said, they don't need to be visible, so that a lot of the time parents of my students may be sitting on the sofa, and so they'll be able to hear the lesson the whole time. And every now and again they might chime in and say, don't forget that, I don't know, whatever it might be. So the speakers are quite useful if you want other people to be able to hear the lesson. Okay, other than that, that's not really much to say there. Internet speed, definitely check your internet speed in general and also before the lesson. So if it looks like the internet speed is going to be a bit slow for that lesson, then you can take necessary precautions. For example, you could hotspot your phone. So you'd use your phone as essentially a Wi-Fi source, and you'd be able to connect to that. I won't go into how to do that right now, but that is a possibility. You can do a speed test just on Google or on most places, really most browsers and so on. This is ridiculously high. Most people won't get it this high, but really anything above 10-ish, it should be sufficient for an online lesson. You probably want to make sure that other people aren't streaming things in the house and downloading too much stuff at the same time. This is a Wi-Fi booster, so if you've got a quite big house and maybe where you'd like to have the lesson is quite far away from the router, you can set up a little booster which basically you put that halfway between where you would like to have the lesson and where the router is, and it sort of amplifies the signal. So that might be a worthwhile investment. They only cost maybe £10-15. Okay, now recording your lessons. Yes, I would. So again, some people feel a bit funny about having their lessons recorded. I think it's a really, really useful thing, because you then have a recording of what took place, what I might have said, or what whatever teacher might have said, and whenever they explain something, then you would be able to go rewatch that later on if you wanted to have it re-explained to you without having to bring it up next lesson and then have to pay for that, obviously. At PH tutoring, you don't. The student is not in video at all. So I have two monitors, and I'll have one monitor which would be videoed, which would be recorded, and my voice would be recorded, but the student's webcam image would be on my other monitor, and that would not be in the video, and neither would their voice. So the voice would not appear on the recording either. So the recording of my lessons would only include me and the screen that I'm sharing. But I would recommend doing that for all students. Definitely familiarize yourself with Google Drive. Google Drive is a very, very powerful way of sharing resources, of saving things and having it accessible by multiple people. And you can connect everything together. So I use these a lot in my lessons. I could have a Google Sheet which tracks our lessons and has links to various files that we've used, and it would also help us to monitor how progress is going. So what grades are they getting? And so you could have the test, what grade you got, and then a link to the test that you sat, another link to the answers to the test you sat, maybe another link of a video that I made on how to answer some of the questions. So definitely, if you're unfamiliar with Google Drive, maybe do a refresher course and so on. And by the way, I also run lessons on how to use all these tools that I'm going to be going through. What device should I use? Well, some people do lessons on tablets. Some people use lessons on do lessons on just regular laptops, and then we got Chromebooks, or I've even had lessons on phones. I would say fairly unsurprisingly, the best quality lesson you'll have is on a standard computer or laptop, desktop or laptop. Downside to Chromebook is that it's some of the features that are used on Zoom are not possible on Chromebooks, which means, and specifically, you won't be able to interact with the teacher as well as you can on a regular laptop. So there are ways of sharing. So I can actually allow you to share my screen and control my screen. We could write on on the screens together, and so we'd be able to point to things and fill in complete work together, and I'd be able to see in real time what you're doing. You can't do that on a Chromebook. I think you can do it on most tablets. I'm not sure. Again, it depends on what software you're using. But the downside with a tablet is that the webcams like to be shaky, and because you'll be drawing on the thing on the surface that also has the webcam, so that's going to be a bit difficult. But it does have the advantage that you can draw on the surface, and which means that bit could be easier. Tablets are very, very good for viewing things like whiteboards. Some of the whiteboard I generally use is very good because you can zoom in and zoom out very, very easily and scan around. Phones not really very good because it's obviously a very small screen. However, I have taught lessons on all of these, and with a fair amount of success. But the best quality lesson you'll get is on a standard computer or laptop. I've put these things down here to remind me that you could actually use multiple devices. Many of my students do use multiple devices, and it works quite well. So you'd have the main device where the lesson would take place, and then you'd have another device where you would be able to share resources with me via Skype or WhatsApp. So we'd have the lesson on Zoom, and then you'd complete some work on a piece of paper, snap a picture, send it to me, and then we'll put it on the screen, and we'll be both looking at it at the same time. And that process takes just a few seconds. So multiple devices could be quite a good thing to do as well. So that brings me to the workspace. How should you set yourself up? Well, you basically want enough space to see the computer, have any other devices you want to have in a lesson, and enough space to put any notes there. And you just don't want it to be very cluttered. You want lots of space, lots of natural light so you can see yourself, so I can see you, so you can see all the notes you want to be making, and you have all your stationery easily accessible. Make sure that you have any textbooks or any tools, calculators, stationery, anything like that ready for the lesson as well, so as it doesn't eat into lesson time. Whoops. Making effective notes. Well, again, because this is online, I can't see what notes you're making. So you got to think. I think a bit of advice about these notes, and this is obviously good advice for outside of lessons or any lessons, school or otherwise. You can see these notes, we look at them and go, oh, they're lovely notes, aren't they? But what is it that makes them lovely? Well, I think they're very neat. They seem to be very neatly set out. What I like about them is the use of colour. It looks to me, it's very likely the colour has a particular theme. So we've got these yellow, pink and green colours here. And it might be that the yellow notes mean something, the pink notes mean something, and the green notes mean something. So it's eye-catching, but also the colours mean something, which is, I think, really, really useful. They've labelled all the diagrams. They've used lots of little headings, and essentially what you're trying to do here is make the notes easily accessible for when you want to revise from them later on. Okay, so timestamps. Yes, so if you are recording the lessons, then a really good idea is that whenever I'm explaining something that you know that you're going to need some help with, make a little note in your margin of what time I explained that, or how long into the video I explained that. And then when you want to rewatch me explaining it, you get your notes out and you know what video it is, you know what time I started explaining it. It will take you no time at all to rewatch my explanation of that topic. So revising, you won't need a revision lesson from your teacher. You'll just need to rewatch that explanation. If the explanation was not, you didn't get it when you revised it, then of course you would need a revision lesson. But otherwise, just rewatch the recording. So top tips, write neatly and clearly, start each new page or lesson with a new, each new topic or lesson with a new page. I use a slash there because sometimes we might start, the next lesson might just continue from the last topic. And so you might think, oh, let's just stay on the same page. And in some cases that makes sense. But if it's a new topic and a new lesson, definitely a new page, okay? Use dates. Again, that's going to be important because if you're trying to find the video or you want to know, you want to have some sort of reference as to when we learnt about this so you can find everything you need to find. Keep your notes in a notebook. No, don't use loose paper. A lot of people have a lovely idea of having lots of loose paper and then like filing it in certain ways. I've never seen it really work effectively, to be honest with you. Well, okay, maybe once or twice, but usually, by and large, it doesn't work. Having a notebook for one topic, it just seems to work much better in my experience. So one notebook for each subject. So one note for biology, a book for biology, a book for chemistry, or whatever, however you decide to divide your topics. And then have those notebooks different colors. So you know straight away, that's my green notebook, that's biology. By the way, that's the general standard colors. Biology is green, physics is blue, chemistry is orange or sometimes red, and math is also blue, annoyingly, but you can use a different, whatever. Anyway, you can use whatever colors you want, but I would suggest to use different colored notebooks for each subject. Use titles and subtitles as these notes have done here. Use color themes, so don't just add lots of color. I mean, color is very good on its own, but even more effective is having the color mean something. So green means this, red, pink means that, so on. Whatever, decide. A really good idea that I've seen lots of students use effectively is having lists. So you might, at the back of your book, you might have lists. So things that I need to revise, or to-do list, or homework list, or whatever it might be. And you have a variety of different lists. And as you're going through your lesson, you might add to that. Alternatively, you might have a list per lesson. So at the end of each lesson, you might say, or leave a gap at the beginning of the lesson and say targets or objectives for the lesson, or whatever it is that you think might be good. And you can ask for my guidance. That will change from student to student. So that's all those things. And I'm sure there's lots of other good ideas, but that should be a really good way to get you started. Okay, so now on to if we want to spend a bit of money, because as I said, I really think these online lessons they're going to be here to stay for at least for a while, and quite likely be a permanent sort of large percentage of your future learning. And so I would recommend investing in some hardware to improve the quality of your lessons. These will pay dividend in no time at all if you get them sooner rather than later. So a pen tablet is essentially this stylus, I guess, would write onto this surface, and then sort of ink or whatever would appear on the, obviously not real ink, but an image would appear onto your monitor. If you're using the right software, that is. So it's sort of, your computer sort of recognizes it as a mouse. However, certain applications, you realize it's not a mouse, it's a pen tablet. And so you can use a mouse and a pen tablet together, and they would perform different functions. It just means that you're able to write things naturally and not have to use a keyboard, and drawing diagrams is easy. Drawing diagrams, labeling diagrams, it's all that really, really easy. It just means there's less mental energy being taken up in trying to work out how you can display your notes. So pen tablets are, I would say, the number one choice for if you're going to spend any money on lessons. That's the first thing I would get. Next thing, if you're going to spend any money on lessons, is maybe you could consider a dual monitor setup. Actually, I'm going to go back just a little bit to pen tablets just for a moment. One other thing I should mention is that the other advantage of pen tablets, because I use a pen tablet a lot, and I use whiteboard software. So I'd be writing on my notes on my whiteboard, and if I had a student who had a pen tablet, and a couple of my students do, we can write on the same whiteboard at the same time, which is really, really good. So I could be setting some work while you're completing some work, or I could be watching you complete it, and we could write things at the same time. That's something you can't do in real life, can you? Because you'll be both crowding around the same piece of paper. So yeah, pen tablets is really good. Dual monitor setups. So why is this good for online lessons? Well, first of all, just to let's explain what it means. Obviously, it means two monitors, as you can see, but the difference being is that one monitor will show something different to the other monitor. Now, you'd have to do a little bit of research into how to set this up, but I can probably briefly say that basically right-click on your desktop and go to display settings, and you should be able to work it out from there. If not, just Google it, YouTube it, or something. Now, the advantage is that on one monitor, you may have my screen, and on the other monitor, you could have your screen. And then on my monitor, I could have my screen and your screen. So we could be both seeing each of the screens at the same time. And also, if we both give each other permission, we could both control each of the screens at the same time. So we'd have full interactivity there. I'd be able to see what you're doing on your screen, you'd be able to see what I'm doing on my screen, and that would work. That would be really good. And if we had that and a pen tablet each, well, we would be flying, really, with the recording as well. Yeah. So how much money are we talking about here then? Well, these obviously look reasonably flashy monitors, but you can get a second-hand monitor from Gumtree or something like this for nowadays maybe 10-20 quid. It won't be anywhere near as large and fancy as this, but they will serve the purpose. If you've already got a monitor and you've got a laptop, they can connect up and they would already have a dual monitor setup. So if you've got a desktop somewhere that's not being used at the time of the lesson, then you could disconnect it and connect it to a laptop you may have, and you've already got a free dual monitor setup right there. So yeah, I hope you find that useful. I'm just going to briefly go through those notes from the beginning. So we talked about webcam, how to use the webcam. We talked about whether to use sound, headphones or speakers. Internet speed, how to make the most of it. Why to record your lessons. Google Drive, using what sort of device you should use and how to use multiple devices. How to set up your workspace, making effective notes, and pen tablets and dual monitor setup. So if you have any other questions, let me know. And if you would like any advice on how to do this, or any support, I do also supply. I do teach parents quite a lot on how to do these, how to set this up, as well as some much more advanced things that I've not mentioned in this tutorial. So please let me know if you would like any help. Thanks.